This bonus episode features Safe House 1618 writer and director Calvin T. Shepard. Find him on Instagram at Calvin T. Shepard Films.
Welcome to another bonus episode of the IndieEye Film Awards podcast. For this episode, it's kind of a hybrid. It's kind of a part 2 of our bad review special. And if you haven't checked that out, and you have 3 hours of your life to spare, I definitely recommend checking out the bad review special where Dante Albane and I got to talk about a little behind the scenes exchange I had with a particular filmmaker about how they perceived negative reviews that they received. But also we mentioned director Calvin T. Shepard and his film Safe House 1618 because Calvin was actively sharing on Instagram kind of negative reviews and stuff that he had gotten, and he was just embracing it all. So we had been mentioning Calvin. I wanted to bring Calvin on and talk about his experience making that film. So we got to do that right now, along with Dante Albane. So the three of us got together to have a little bit of a chaotic conversation. And I know I came away from it with just huge respect for Calvin and his dedication to the craft, to making films, not letting obstacles block him from doing what he wants to do. I think it's a great interview, and Calvin's a great guy. But enough of me. Let's get into this interview where I am joined by Calvin T. Shepard and Dante Albane. Now, I am joined by Dante Albane and Calvin T. Shepard, awesome directors, indie film veterans now, getting themselves going in the festival circuit. Dante, of course, has joined us before. He is the director of The Alpines, director of the short film Polaroid, several other projects. Calvin T. Shepard submitted Safe House 1618 to IndieEye Film Awards in January of 2022. A huge winner for us in the narrative feature film category. He also had a Best Actor in there, Jasmine Day. I think Calvin's very familiar with Jasmine. Calvin's joining us to talk about Safe House 1618, some other things were related to directing, and what he's got coming up next. And Dante's here because Dante is admittedly a huge fan of Calvin T. Shepard. And if you've heard the Bad Review special bonus episode, available now, you should go listen to that and hear Dante fawn all over Calvin T. Shepard for good reason, because he's pretty brilliant. Calvin, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. That episode, I listened to the whole thing, and I get brought up multiple times. And it's really hard to tell people you should go listen to this because they're really nice about me. They talk about my bad reviews. They talk about how good I am at getting bad reviews. This doesn't work every time I try to bring it up. So,
and Dante, how are you doing today, buddy?
I'm doing great. I just found out why I'm here. That's interesting to me.
Yeah, did we wake you, Dante? I'm so sorry.
I mean, yeah, you did actually.
Aren't you on the East Coast?
Yeah, it's 1:15 here.
There's shame in his voice. It must have been a good evening.
No, there's no shame at all. It was actually just a night of Amazon shopping and Cheers watching.
Oh, well,
drinking.
that is
but
a
not
great
bad
evening.
Drinking. I swear I'm not an alcoholic. If you guys listen to that last,
which is exactly
podcast,
what an alcoholic would say. Yeah. No, I don't have a problem. I can quit anytime. Dante, let me ask you this. How many beers have you had prior to this call?
None yet.
Okay.
But literally because I just woke up.
Fire it up. All right.
I brushed my teeth. I got to get my water in, clear my palate.
All right. Well, I'll let you wake up. I'm going to ask Calvin a couple of questions here.
Sure.
Calvin, how did you even find IndieEye Film Awards?
Film Freeway. I can't remember. I'm pretty sure I was just scrolling. You guys were on the first or second page on one day, and it was I remember looking at it, and it was extremely enticing. Just the idea that if you submit to this, they might talk about it. Because
right.
A written review is great, and I thank you guys for that as well. But to hear someone talk about it out loud, that really it kind of changes things. And I don't know, it's just a different feeling. And so like when I saw that part, I was like, it'd be really cool. So I submitted. I don't know if you remember this or not. I submitted, and then I listened to your podcast. And I listened to your podcast because what I did was I submitted to multiple categories, didn't give you any information about those categories, and then listened to your podcast where you scrutinized other filmmakers for not scrutinized. I don't know if that's the right word, but like, if you're going to have a best actor, you should probably put who the actor is that you're putting up for this award or those types of things. And I hadn't done that. And I went, oh, it's a good thing I listened to the podcast, and I went and like emailed you, and I sent you a message on Film Freeway. I submitted to like every single available contact I could find. So
awesome. Yeah. And how has like, I'm getting ahead of myself a little bit here, but what is your experience with Film Freeway been like? So many indie filmmakers out there are submitting, and you have some festivals that aren't quite punctual with their notification dates. Are you having any difficult experiences like that on Film Freeway?
Yes and no. I mean, like, I kind of in a bit of a weird situation. So I submitted to a lot of festivals that just kind of, just kind of like very quickly. So some of them aren't great at what they do, and that kind of sucks. And but like at the same time, if you're submitting to enough, like I was, it's like, well, there's another one next week. So
right.
So oh well, and so it kind of, that's the kind of way I see it. And some of it, I am spending, the money, but
right.
There's ways to there's ways to get discount codes and things like that by putting your film on the email list or whatever for a week and so I kind of just it's been good. It's been really good. It's difficult sometimes, and I understand a lot of stuff you guys were talking about last time, in the sense of like, yeah, there's fake ones and there's ones that are like just there to take your money and stuff like that. But on the other hand, like if you win one that seems a bit sketchy or get selected, there's no reason not to be proud of that, because it's just another laurel on the poster. So
absolutely, I definitely believe in that. I mean, hey, all wins are to be celebrated. So
exactly,
that's awesome.
Exactly.
But yeah, I think that's a common experience for indie filmmakers and using Film Freeway. And again, it's not to knock Film Freeway at all. I think they provide an amazing service. It's just that it's fairly easy to start a festival on Film Freeway, although they do verify ID and tax information, things like that. I mean, these are all things that can be faked, but they are as thorough as I feel is possible in vetting and making sure things are legit. So I'm glad to hear that what you're saying is a positive experience, but it sounds like it's probably pretty relatable to a lot of filmmakers who are listening who use Film Freeway and shotgun their submissions. I think that's something we've all done at some point. There's a lot of enthusiasm when you finish a film. You want to really get some independent feedback, and sometimes it's, even if there's no communication with the festival, getting those laurels to put on your poster or put on your website is a huge win. So I think that's pretty relatable for everybody. Calvin, how did the concept of Safe House 1618 develop?
Through hardship, I guess. I mean, that's kind of our whole thing, right? Is I was I just graduated college in 2019, my undergrad in 2019, and got a job at a movie theater, which I loved. It was the greatest. Like, I was a manager there. Nice. It was like a brand new one, and I got to like make up like movie themed cocktails. We had a margarita called Napalm in the morning because it had Mountain Dew in it.
Nice.
And then I was working on a film in March of 2020, which for some reason never will see the light of day. Something happened in 2020. It just kind of threw a wrench in everything. I got laid off from the theater, and I was kind of I was, just like everybody, stuck inside for like 6 months, I think. And then I had to find something. So I went and worked at a sand and gravel pit, which was awful, for a year. And I wrote Safe House 1618 kind of about the experience of quarantine, which I realize now is kind of where some of the bad reviews come from, because that moment where it hits the wall, where they're stuck inside for 40 days, is where people get really bored. Because I was trying to get that feeling that I had when I was stuck inside for a long time. What I did was I saved up all my money from working at the mine, at the sand and gravel pit, and I had 2 weeks of PTO I was allowed to take off. I took those PTO weeks. We did 2 weeks of shooting nonstop, and then edited it and threw it together. And that's kind of how the whole thing came together. So,
wow. So while you're, and that is tough work. While you're doing that job, I'm sure during the activities of the day, you're thinking about pre-production and dialogue and things like that.
oh yeah.
How hard was it to juggle both being a producer and then going to work in an exhausting job?
It was a lot. Man, a couple of secrets about that trade is, one, it's a lot of mindless work that you can do with headphones on, and music really helps me go to a different place. So I kind of just put myself into those, digging situations, and like be shoveling all day long and just not actually be there. I think if I wasn't making a movie, that job would have been a lot worse. And then there's times when you're just driving around checking on things, and during that time, I would take phone calls if they were necessary, and by driving around, I mean we're on dirt roads, driving 5 miles an hour, looking at conveyor belts. Like, I'm not driving on the highway talking on the phone about movie stuff,
right?
But that's kind of how I handled everything, and I would work from 5 a.m. till about 6 p.m. And then I'd go home and I'd have meetings with Eli, who's the cinematographer, and we would have meetings 2 times a week for about 2 hours, and going over everything that I had thought about, which, it was really helpful to get a lot of that done. And then weekends, I'd spend time with the actors and do things like that. And then, what was the other one? And then as we got closer and closer, it was every single night. I was probably working from 5 to 6, and coming home till working probably about 10 o'clock. And then we would, and then I'd go to bed and get up and do the same thing. And then about that time, a couple months before we started filming, we had a schedule change at the mine, where we would, instead of working from 5 to 6, we would work, from 11 a.m. to midnight for 1 week every month.
Oh.
And so I had like a couple hours in the morning where I could get a lot done, but I couldn't get anything done at night. And that kind of really threw a wrench in stuff. Wow. But we figured it out. So,
Dante, isn't that a prime example of the dedication and discipline and just insane obsession and passion that indie filmmakers need to have to get something done of quality? I mean, as you know, that's so challenging to deal with, but if you're that relentless, you'll make it happen. What do you think about that, Dante?
It all sounds very familiar, painfully familiar, except for the job. I worked a very different job. I managed a restaurant while we were making the Alpines. But it's actually funny because my first job was also at a movie theater. That was like, I worked there for 5 years. Like, all right, there we go. Something else in common. Flashbacks. I mean, I used to take home so many. I still have like 40 just sitting
Oh my! I
in
have
a
so
thing.
many.
I took the stupidest things. Did you ever take the cardboard cutouts?
No, we didn't have very many there, but I took the bus shelter ones, like the massive full wall posters
Nice.
that I had.
I took one of those. I got yelled at. Yeah, I think I brought home one for. How was it? Taking of Pelham 1, 2, 3. I think is the name of the movie. And my dad was so pissed. I'm like, all right, I'm not bringing another one of those home. But then I ended up bringing home. I know it's weird. I don't even like the movie. But we got one of those big cardboard cutouts from Rob Zombie's Halloween 2. And I don't know why. I thought it was really cool. So I brought it home and I set it up. It was October, I think, or September. So I think the movie came out in August. And I brought it home and I set it up and I didn't tell anybody. And my dad saw it. And I'm like, I almost got kicked out of my house. It was just like, that was the last straw. Like, this is not about to be a decoration inside the home. I'm like, I'm sorry. But it was there for like 2 months.
Well,
I have the bus shelter ones rolled up in the corner over here, and I have Dr. Sleep, Split, Joker, and Richard Jewell.
Wow.
See, the first two make sense. Why did you take home Richard Jewell? I actually love that movie.
I don't know. It was. I don't know. I think it's just so crazy. We got a bus shelter. Like, we only had one, like, case for those posters, and to get like a Richard Jewell one during the summer of 2019, which 2019 is a good year for movies. So, like, I don't know. It feels like it felt interesting to me, so I kept it.
Alright, I feel that. I mean, maybe they were just like banking on Clint Eastwood. I don't know a lot of people that saw that movie, but I was on board for it. I really like what's his name?
Paul Walter Hauser.
Yeah, I just saw him in. Did you catch Blackbird?
Oh my gosh, that show was awesome.
Blackbird was great.
He's so good.
He is. So
what was the question again?
No, well, I was just talking about the discipline and dedication that it takes to complete a feature film. But listening to you guys chat about working at the movie theaters, I feel like an outsider because I never even occurred to me to work at a movie theater. But I was always there. I was at the movies as a younger man prior to a family and all of that. I was at the movie theaters. I mean, at least every week. Sometimes I didn't even know what I was going to see. It's Friday night. I'm going to head there and see what's out. What inspired you, Calvin, to be a filmmaker? When did this begin for you?
Oh, man. I made my first short, like, crappy film in middle school. I remember very, very not clearly at all. But I remember we were assigned a book, and we had to, like, give a play about that book. And I, like, came up with the bright idea of how to be different, because that's what I typically did. And so I took a scene from that book and we filmed it. And like, if I were to make that scene today, I'm pretty sure it would be pretty good, but it wasn't any good.
Sure.
And but then in high school, I made a few of them, and it was kind of just like I didn't really understand at all what I was doing. But like when it would start happening, it's definitely like, oh, I feel very at home doing this. Like, it's very easy for me to do.
Right.
But I also thought, like, as far as I knew, right, movies were Star Wars and the Spider-Mans that were coming out at the time and that type of thing, like massive stuff that I didn't know how to make.
Right.
And my dad had, like, shown me Scorsese and Tarantino and stuff like that. But, like, still, even watching that stuff, I goes, oh, well, I can't do that. It wasn't until I was in college, and I had actually seen things like Mallrats and Jason Silent Bob Strike Back and all that, but I hadn't seen Clerks. And when I saw Clerks, and it kind of all clicked, it's like you can easily, like not easily, but like you can do this for no money. Whether or not somebody's going to like it or not is was a little bit of a different lesson. But like the fact that you could make it for no money certainly opened up there. So, which is really fun for me because he started a film festival up there in Jersey, which is why I might get to meet Dante because we're playing there in November. So
that's so, and that's the SModCastle Film Festival. Is that right?
Yeah, shameless self plug. We're going to be playing.
yeah, absolutely. And let's touch on that again towards the end. I want to make sure that we give you as much possible promotion as we possibly can. And that's really cool to hear you bring up Kevin Smith. I mean, I think he's currently fairly polarizing in the industry for several reasons, but I've had the same experience you had. I mean, I saw Clerks when it got hot, like back in the mid 90s, first came out. We had to like find a place where we could rent it. It was hard to locate, and it blew me away. I was shocked. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is in black and white, and this looks cheaply made, but it's awesome, and I enjoyed every second of it. I mean, I felt at that point, okay, then there's no barriers. I can just go make a film. So that it sounds like we had that, each had that light bulb after kind of seeing Clerks. And I actually keep a Funko Pop, a Kevin Smith Funko Pop here at my workstation, just to remind me that, there are no excuses just to go out and make the stuff, because you can make a whole career off of just that. So that's really cool to hear.
Make sure you get tickets for Clerks 3 next week.
Oh yeah, that is next week. There we go.
I'm so hyped.
Yeah.
Yeah. I end up enjoying the movies no matter, what the quality is of it, just because it's like nostalgia. I'm super excited as well.
Calvin, while you're down in Jersey, you also definitely have to check out the store. It's in Red Bank. It's called Silent Bob's Secret Stash. It's like nerd heaven.
Calvin, all the festival love that you have received with Safe House 1618, it's all fine, it's all uplifting, but getting there must have been very difficult. Making this indie film, working your job at the same time. Can you talk about any unexpected obstacles that came up during production?
Well, there were a ton. Man, there were like, it snowed one day. That's the great part of being in Colorado filming in April. It's like one day it's just gonna randomly snow. So we had to shift like everything around. That was great. Gotta love snow. I mean, there's just so many. It's like at this level, it's, and I imagine even getting bigger, but I think the job of a filmmaker is just adapting to the situation that you have at hand and just moving forward because you have no other option. And like, we had so many situations where people didn't show up. Like, we had somebody that was supposed to come slit Jesse's throat on the couch, and they didn't show up, and we ended up having to find somebody else and get it done and figure it out because we didn't have much time. And like I said, I had to be back at the mine on Monday after we filmed. So like, there was so much. And then like, even when we got into editing, they would be editing, Garrett and Eli would be editing, and I would be at work, and I'd get calls from them, and I'd have to like Venmo them money to go get extra hard drives because this and that went wrong, and like, just like in sleeping on their couches, and they were sleeping. Like, it was just, I mean, it was a nightmare and a half, but it was a really enjoyable nightmare that I would like to go back to at some point.
Well, yeah. And what do you think was your biggest lesson learned throughout the whole process?
Cool. Not to get into too crazy stuff, but like you guys had kind of pointed out, it's out on Amazon, all that got distributed, which was really cool. I'm not a part of that. That's not my doing. I kind of stepped away from that version and stuff. And I guess the biggest lesson I learned was, without getting into too much detail on this, but yeah, definitely be really careful who you put your trust in, and really, really make sure you have everything figured out ahead of time.
Yes.
So that's my biggest lesson. And like when you're doing this, and you guys have both made feature films, and you know, it's kind of like I've this is technically my fourth, but I really only claim it as my third. And like I've made movies that have done nothing, not gotten any distribution, and maybe got into one or two festivals as official selections, and that's it, you know, and that's as far as they went. I definitely think that like the lessons I learned from those movies are the reason why Safe House 1618 has done a little bit better, and you know, a lot better than those two movies. But what I didn't expect is like having to start paying attention to a lot of the business side a lot more than I had before, because the idea that, you know, we're making these indie movies, eventually it becomes kind of like you're still running a business, and you're still, you know, you're still doing all that. It's not just, you know, it's not like you're just painting on a canvas and then the painting's out there and it's yours. You have lots of people working on it, and not everybody is on your side.
Right. Exactly. No, that's a great point. And I want to take a second to kind of shout out to Dan Mervish, director of 18 and a Half, which is currently also making a major festival run. But Dan published a book that you can find on Amazon called The Cheerful Subversive's Guide to Independent Filmmaking. And it touches on sort of setting this all up as a business first, and ways to navigate your filmmaking stuff. Because as creatives, obviously we're like, let's go shoot a movie. We're going to write it, and we're going to do this, and we're going to do that, and we're going to edit it. And we like the business side of it, if you're creative minded, is so uninteresting that you don't generally think about it before. You don't want to think about it after. You just want someone else to do it. But if you do learn a little bit, it will help you in the long run just for the simple sake of saving receipts and understanding what you can use as a write-off, and collecting this for your budget records. But there's so much more. So that book is very helpful for independent filmmakers, and I think it helps us all avoid some of that bad taste that you kind of have in your mouth now after things are said and done, and it's out there.
Right.
I think that's a great point you bring up. And yeah, I understand not wanting to get deeper into things, but I think it's relatable. I think it's relatable to everyone on this call that independent film distribution is, you know, it's kind of a Russian roulette game. You got everybody comes out of the woodwork to say, I want to distribute your film. And these are all people telling you things that you've wanted to hear forever, and you don't know who to trust, but you want to trust them all, and you're ready to write a check or send any amount of money to get something done, and maybe the results end up not being what you hoped for. Things aren't what promises that are made are not fulfilled. So it's a tough thing to navigate, and it's important to go into your filmmaking process with a business mind. Now, it's also okay, as I did, to know that the film you're about to make, you're not going to use quite as a business, and you just want to make it, go through a process, learn things, put it out there. You don't set your sights on making a profit. That can be fine too if you're looking forward to just the educational side of it or the experience. But I think, and I think we're going to have more people on bonus episodes of IndieEye to discuss this as well, but it's so important to properly navigate your film from the beginning, from the iteration of it as a business, and have a good idea of what you want to do with it afterwards, so that when strangers come calling and want all sorts of rights to your film, you have a better feel of how to navigate through that. So good point.
I didn't do too much as far as like focusing on the business end with the Alpines. A lot of that fell on Mally, thankfully. She was kind of the rock in that department, because I still have a lot to learn there, and sometimes I'm a little bit stubborn too with things like that, and even just promotional things. Like, I just want to make my movie. I don't even enjoy making like posters and trailers and all that shit that obviously you need to do to promote yourself and promote your movie. I just want to make the movie, and I think that's something that is, a little bit of a struggle for me now. Like, as I kind of progress, and with the next couple of projects that I'm diving into, is trying to kind of pre-plan for those things and put more time and focus into those aspects, because I've never really, honestly, I've never really cared about those things, because I just, I want to make my movie. But that's obviously, like, comes with growth and whatnot. That's all such a huge part of it. And then the business side of things is just like a whole nother ball game. Like, I was also very trusting and kind of like go with the flow, and Mally wasn't. And thankfully, she's the one who was more in charge of those things. She's like, no, we're going to get a lawyer. We're going to have these things reviewed and all this stuff. I'm like, what do we need a lawyer for? It feels like it all makes perfect sense to me. And I'm just reading things. I'm like, okay, yeah, this makes sense. And I don't think there was a lot like that was kind of like changed when it came down to like contracts and whatnot with the distributors. But it was still incredibly valuable and helpful that they got reviewed, because like little things, like making sure that we've got sequel rights for a movie that we're never going to make a sequel for, but it's cool to know that we have them. And just like little things, we kind of like hit back on the distributors about the like original offers, rather than just kind of jumping on it and saying, oh, cool, they want our movie, this is what they're going to take. Having a lawyer in our corner, and we also have producers rep, having them on our side to kind of get a little pushback when it's like, all right, this is what they're going to offer us. We're like, we don't really want that. Can we go lower? Can we try this? Can we try that? And we did. We negotiated instead of just sort of accepting what was sort of like blanket on the table. And a lot of that I credit to Mally, because she, like I said, she was the one who put all the focus in there. I'm just a creative. I just want to edit, shoot, and that's where I can wrap my head around that stuff. Everything else, I don't know. I'm trying to do my own independent research now and figure things out, because like you said, you put a little trust in the wrong person, and that can't feel good, I'm sure. Especially because arguably, I'm sure you're the one that worked harder, and now somebody else is reaping the rewards, and you probably want to rip their fucking head off. Sorry, I can get really candid. That's the Jersey, New York coming out of me. I would knock that fucker into Tuesday.
I definitely feel that way. I mean, like right now, I'm working on a new project, and I'm working with different people, obviously, and I can certainly feel the difference. Like what you were talking about there, is it like I didn't really know what it felt like to have somebody like legitimately in your corner when it comes to this stuff. Like when you were talking about the lawyers and like how they have your back, like I thought this individual was in my corner, had my back, right? And that's kind of how it felt. And then as I, and the things I didn't notice were things that I figured that's just how the film industry works, in the sense of like, they didn't tell me a lot of things that they had going on. And when that was going on, I was kind of like, well, it's my movie. Why don't I get to know? It's like, well, that's because this is how this works. And it's like, oh, okay. And then as that kind of went on, and as more and more stuff got like more and more secretive, is when I started realizing stuff's going on. However, I'm working with new people on this new film, and like everything is so open and so transparent. Like I know everything that's going on, and like
Good.
I see everything, and it's so much more relieving and easy for me to, like I said, like you said, work on that film side of things, the thing that we love to work, because I am able to trust those people more, because it's obvious, because every decision they make, they're making with me as well. So it makes it feel a lot better.
Well, it's certainly nice to have.
100%. I can definitely imagine that.
It's certainly nice to have someone like a Mally Corrigan be the adult in the room and make sure that, we're
the adult in the room?
Yes.
I'm almost 30, man. I might be a kid at heart, but
I'm just saying somebody to have close to the project that's going to make sure I's are dotted, T's are crossed, because I'm just speaking from my own experience. Sometimes you just want to get past the stuff and you don't want to look at the fine print and details. So, like you were saying, it's good to have somebody insist that documents, paperwork get reviewed, so that those little things like having sequel rights, if you lose that and you have a clerk's, and it's something, you might not expect it to take off, but perhaps it does. And now you might not really benefit from anything that builds from that. So it's wise. Mm-hmm. Now let me put the ugly business aspect of indie filmmaking in our rearview mirror here. And I think a big thing we're all seeking, the three of us are all seeking validation that what we made is good and that people want to watch it. That's at the core of what we're doing. So Calvin, can you talk about the acknowledgement, the good feedback you've had during your festival run? What's the experience been like for you?
I had this one film festival that gave me a all right review, but they gave me an award. I just don't understand how I could get an award and have not just like a great raving review. Like I paid for the review. Come on.
Oh, you were saving this up, huh?
Definitely thinking about it. I wasn't sure how I was going to do it, but no, the good stuff has been really great. And like, honestly, Dante, your review is awesome. I really appreciate your review a lot. And the good reviews, I've been thinking a lot lately with, like the, the whole "Don't Worry, Darling" drama stuff.
Right.
You get the good reviews, and it feels like that Harry Styles interview where it's like, what I like about the movie is it feels like a movie.
It's like a movie.
Like right. The good reviews kind of feel like that sometimes. The sense of like, yeah, I love this. I haven't gotten anything out of it, but I feel great about it. You
right.
know?
Yeah.
And sometimes, like you guys brought up the Indie Film Review podcast that you had both been on, and I have been on that one too. And I love that review. I love that. I love listening to it because it's just hilarious. There's a part where one of the guys goes, I had to point this out because Calvin has a throw up scene to jerk off scene to jerk off scene to throw up scene, and I've never seen that in the history of film. And they're just hilarious. And one thing I find really interesting about certain reviews and stuff is like one of two things happens: is either they like Dante did, and rightfully so, says that like after the first 15-20 minutes it hits a wall and it gets kind of boring. They either point that out in a review, or they notice that I'm kind of trying to do the COVID thing and the quarantine thing. Mm-hmm. But then they also say like that still doesn't forgive the fact that it gets boring right there, and which is totally understandable, because there's got to be a way to kind of, and I tried to make that section interesting, and I never ever figured that it would be seen as the boring part of the movie, even though it totally makes sense that it is. And so like, that's certainly something I've learned from reviews. But yeah, it's great to have good reviews. And I also think it's fantastic to have bad reviews.
Yeah, well, I'm glad you brought that
Full
up.
disclosure, I never used the word boring. I never said that.
Hold on, let me look. No, I'm just kidding.
Oh, I'm glad
I
you
didn't look. I'm like, there's no way I wrote the word boring.
No. And I know you didn't, but you definitely did point out that after that first 15, 20 minutes that like it kind of hits. Wait, what did you say? You said like it stops, like the car stops or something along those lines. So you definitely did point out that it slows down significantly after that.
Oh, yeah. But, I mean, the pacing a little bit, personal opinion, a little tighter, but I did not use the word boring.
No, but a lot of people have. So, I mean,
well, on that point, pacing is it's very challenging when you are starting out in indie film, because unless you've been an editor for several projects over and over and over, and this is my opinion, because I still struggle with it, and I'm editing stuff every day, but finding good pacing is a challenge. And when you are the writer, you are the director, you're very much involved in cinematography, everything you've captured are your darlings, and you want to say, I love this, we shot this, I want to show this, and here's what this is, and you love looking at it, and it's hard to put ourselves in the body of the viewer who has no connection at all to the film, and what's making them want to watch this and get to the next scene that is something that develops over time, over experience, unless you're just supernaturally gifted, which some people are. I'm not, so it's still, I have to work at it every time I'm making something, and sometimes I have to watch even the weekly videos I make that go onto YouTube for other clients. I've got to save it, watch it the next day and see, okay, are there 3 words here I can cut out? Is there anything I can remove to keep this moving? Because particularly on YouTube, I'm focused on keeping eyeballs on the video and not letting them click away. So that's a typical struggle all indie filmmakers come across, and you learn it after the fact, because then you find out, people kind of stop at that point, So it's excellent feedback when you hear things like that, because it makes you a better filmmaker. And Calvin, we mentioned you quite a bit as we discussed about the bad review special bonus episode of IndieEye Film Awards, which people should check out. It's not an easy listen, because Dante and I think really
it was brilliant.
we go, and just if somebody's listening to this hasn't listened to that, Dante and I both read, Dante more so because he had more material to pull from, because he has more viewers.
Shit. That one's my favorite.
Yes. we talk about bad reviews and negative feedback for our films, but we discuss a situation that happened behind the scenes with IndieEye with somebody who submitted, and they submitted for categories and a written review. They received a fairly negative written review by Dante / DJ Ford, and but they were still an official selection for the film festival. And this is what Calvin was alluding to earlier. But this particular submitter was struggling with reconciling that they were an official selection but received a bad review. And for IndieEye, I reiterate here, we are a monthly online film festival. It is a competition. You can submit something that's perfectly reasonable and qualifies to be in a category. But if you also submit for a written review, which is an outside opinion, that's Dante Albane's opinion of the film and his experience watching it, it may be slightly different. So Calvin had I guess a pretty good review by Dante / DJ Ford back in January. And
He gave me 7 out of 10, which I think is great. I mean, if I had that as a homework assignment, that's a C's get degrees. So
yeah, hey, there you go.
Degrees.
I like that. I love that. Well, we mentioned you quite a bit in the bad review special because you made a post on Instagram where you were showing some bad reviews, and you said all part of the job, which was so refreshing to see someone not only have that attitude toward it, but share it publicly and openly. And it was funny because I saw that just as I was kind of like, we need to talk about this on a podcast, this negative review situation. So it's just so helpful for filmmakers. Can you talk a little bit more about getting negative feedback and how you internalize that and use that to motivate yourself?
Well, yeah, I'm going to start with Dante's review because Dante's review is not a negative. I think Dante's review is a really good review because he starts out by saying, you know, where the film suffers. And he talks a lot about the film as a whole, and like it's both, you know, it's like that compliment sandwich where it's like good, a little bit of bad, good, a little bit of bad, and then, you know, like going back and forth on those, and like everything deserved and that type of thing. But like, I can look at a review and certainly learn, okay, so I need to work on pacing and that type of stuff. But, you know, like there's other things where it's like, there's certain things that had existed in like the 2 hour and 5 cut that we started with. Right.
Wow.
And if I had submitted that version and I had given you the things that like you had asked for, Dante, whether or not you would like them or not is up in the air. And you certainly would have been like, well, this is a 2 hour and 5 cut, which is even longer than the other cut. So I'm not as happy with this just because you added things that you felt were missing. And I think that like you can learn a lot from a review. And I think that like in the sense of like something like this too, is like you don't have to learn from it either. Like you can learn what you want, and then the things that you don't, you just move on from them. And like that's just the way that the filmmaker relationship is. Sure. One thing that I do have a gripe with Dante about.
Oh, now it's getting good.
Uh-oh. Well, this is your fault. No, I'm gonna try to say this without giving too much away. But I had an individual who really wanted to be involved with my next film, and it wasn't going to happen. We're just going a different direction for this one.
Understood.
And this individual turned to your review and said, "Hey, this review says that you were lacking in this thing that I'm good at. So obviously I need to be a part of your next film." So your review was attempted to use to, I don't know if blackmail is the right word, but influence how I make films. And I don't think that like you should ever look at a review that way, in the sense of like, it's, oh, they said this, so now I have to change and do this way. I don't know about you guys. Go ahead. Sorry.
No, that's just, again, I mean, he missed the point of, I mean, not even just my review, but like reviews in general. That's my opinion. Mm-hmm. Like he can't use my opinion to tell you that you're lacking in a certain thing. One, that doesn't necessarily mean you're lacking in that department as a whole. Right. I mean, that's not my opinion of your work as a whole. That whatever the point was, that was my opinion of a piece of that film. So, you know, how much do we learn and grow every day? That's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. Whoever this person is, if you're listening, you're a moron.
Oh man,
and you can send me a go fuck yourself on Instagram too. Okay. You know my name. I have no problem accepting them. Did I tell you I've gotten at least 3?
You've gotten 3?
Oh. 3. I'm not going to name names, but I've gotten 3.
Well, I don't understand that. Like, okay, if I was Toolbox, right? If I was Toolbox, and
let me just iterate that. That is the made up name Dante and I used for the film we discussed in the bad review special. The title that we gave it was Toolbox.
So like if I was Toolbox, right? Like one biggest lesson like in making film is that if you're going to make a film, you're going to have a bad review. I mean, like it would be very, very hard for you to bring me a film and for me to go, okay, I can't find a bad review for this, because I guarantee you it exists somewhere. Right. There is a bad review for every film out there. So one, that's just part of the job, like I said earlier. And two, like after listening to you guys talk about Toolbox for 3 hours, I was nothing but interested in seeing the film. Like if they had just let it be. And like, even if you guys had done a 3-hour talk about it without their situation where you're just shitting on it, what I would have wanted to do is watch the film. So they could have easily used that to their advantage. And like, I think sometimes getting an awful review is just hilarious. And I have some pulled up here for you guys that are just hilarious for my own film.
Well, now you have to read a couple.
There's this one on bitshoot.com, which I don't understand how this worked, but this is the horror stream live thing, and they have a snippet of this video that they've uploaded just about Safe House 1618.
Huh.
And it's a 9-minute clip, and I only found it this morning when I was looking for these, and I watched through it. And basically, this guy has not seen my movie. Instead, he is reading reviews of the movie, and he actually read some of the good ones. And he read in the review that the reviewer of the film thought that the senator could possibly, even though it's never shown in the movie or said in the movie, that the senator is probably Republican, is what he says. And then he also says that the sisters are the main characters. And then the guy immediately goes, so obviously I will never be watching this movie. It is horrible. And it's like, you haven't seen it.
Wow.
Like, you have no idea whether or not this reviewer is right. One, it never actually says in the movie whether or not he's Republican or not. And I don't need to answer that question because you can figure that out on your own. And secondly, like, just because it has female leads, you're not going to watch the movie. There's something very, very wrong with you. Then I have the boring movie, the unbearable, pointless one that we're all getting t-shirted on. And then there's this one, and it has spoilers in it on IMDb. So it, like, sometimes it lets me see it, and then sometimes I can't figure out how to click on it. But I know what it says because one of these is like a 2-star review, and it's the title of it is "It Is Safe Here," and then it goes through and it says there's some murder and there's some blood, but no nudity or sex scenes. Wouldn't watch.
Okay. I guess some
because you've
people
got
are.
female leads, like that's what they're expecting.
They're expecting to have nudity and sex scenes. I like some of the Letterboxd reviews. There's some of them are really, really good. I don't understand sometimes, like, I get ones that are like this one. This review says this movie is rad as hell. 2 stars.
Well, you got 2 stars. That's good.
Yeah, it's better than none. But like, out of like, I just don't understand. Like, this movie is rad as hell. If I put that, I'm probably putting 5 stars. If I'm reviewing a movie, it's like, I think this is rad as hell.
Right.
And then my favorite review of all time is from a website called Sticky Red Body Count Compendium. And they titled the review "The Hitman Blues, Safe House 1618," and it goes through and it talks about the film and all that stuff. And then about halfway through the review, it starts talking about No One, my killer, and it says, "While I do find it nifty that the kills were a mix of standard slasher stabbings and action thriller gunshots via rifles with silencers," which is not a rifle in the entire movie, "I still cannot get past that this quote-unquote professional goes around doing jobs looking like a do-it-yourself slasher villain with his attire of ski masks, goggles, black garbage bags, duct tape, and dishwashing gloves. You got to be snorting a lot of cheese to think that looks badass on screen." And I love that line.
Oh, wow.
After I got that line, and I think this was before we had crossed paths, but I posted that review and a picture of Tony Montana sitting in front of a lot of cheese because I thought,
nice.
Yeah,
that's awesome. Well, you know, as an indie filmmaker now, a veteran director of several projects, Calvin, what are some of your favorite movies and directors that kind of live within you and inspire you to create?
Oh man, that's like the question, right? Because I like the first time I ever heard a blank blank film, like as if it belonged to somebody, as if like a director owned a movie, was when my dad was like, "Hey, we're gonna watch this. It's a Tarantino film." And I had never heard like anyone refer to a film as if it was somebody else's. You know, like
Right.
as far as movies go, they were just popcorn entertainment before then. I definitely started there. I definitely don't go back to his films as often as I did when I was that young. I started there, and as I get older, it gets more and more obscure. Like my favorite director to go through right now, and I think it has a lot to do with what I'm making, but is Dario Argento, actually, with the Italian Giallo films. Like I've been watching all of those, and I've been buying the Arrow box sets as they come out, and
Wow.
I'm obsessed with those films. But from the Tarantino point, it went to then Scorsese, and then finding Coppola, and then finding Carpenter. And Carpenter was a big moment. Like when I found if Carpenter is an enigma. Like his films are so different than anything that like those previous ones had been, and even like anything else you can see, because they feel like very indie. Even like something like The Thing, to me, it feels very indie. I don't know what it is about it. It just it feels like what we do, you know. And not like to bash. That does not mean to bash Carpenter. I meant in the way I think it's a great thing. I think it's amazing. And finding like Fincher after that, and finding, because Dante talked also extensively about Fincher last time as well. I love Fincher stuff. Hey Dante, have you seen the most recent season of Love, Death and Robots and his episode on there?
I actually have. It's this is so embarrassing. I have yet to watch a single episode of Love, Death and Robots.
Well,
I'm planning on it. I just have not gotten to it yet.
It's anthology, so like you don't need to like start in any particular. But if you're obsessed with Fincher, the third season's when he directs an episode, the Bad Traveling one, and like Jasmine and I, we live states away from each other. She lives in California, and we did this. They had the Love, Death and Robots like premiere for those stuff where you could watch them online as they came out, and we watched that episode, not knowing the entire time that it was a Fincher episode. I had no idea. I knew he was directing one, but the way that they show it, they don't tell you which one it is. And like, we were shocked the entire time watching this episode, just like on the edge of our seats. And then it went David Fincher, and I was like, oh my God, that episode is incredible. And I mean, if I had a year, Matt, you asked me to do this. If I had a year, I don't think I could name all the filmmakers that mean something to me.
Yeah, no, that's fair. That's understandable.
Right now, what I'm doing is just staring at my bookshelf and trying to see, like, okay, there's that one. Okay, I did bring up that. Okay, best I can.
Yeah, well, I think that is an example of somebody who loves movies, loves storytelling, and is obviously getting experiences from all sorts of different genres and filmmakers, and that's fantastic. You have a wide scope in which you are looking, and you're not just laser focused at one aspect. I think that makes a better filmmaker.
And Matt, to your point of like just being constantly studying the film and stuff like that, if either one of you ever find your way to the mountains of Colorado, and are interested in seeing something amazing, I found this hole in the wall in Fort Collins, which is like just above Denver, and I spend a lot of time there, and it's where I learn a lot of stuff, and you guys would love it. It's a video rental store that's still open, and it's like wall to wall to wall movies. And like I go in there and it's ran by this guy Jeff, and he's got his own personal collection. And like that's where I get everything, because like he will give me like 5 movies a week, and they're like $1 rentals for like a day, and it's like I can watch. I've seen the craziest shit. Like you guys you would love it. It's just like like I had a video rental store in my hometown. It's like stepping back in time, and it's that's just like it's like a library. It's like a filmmaker's dream. Honestly,
what's the name of this place, Calvin?
It's called Gorehound's Playground, and he has everything. You go in there, I bet you he has it. You could ask him about the craziest stuff, and you'll have it.
Wow, that's awesome.
You said this is near Denver? How far away is it from Colorado Springs?
Colorado Springs is about 2 hours south of Denver, and then Fort Collins is about an hour north of Denver. But like Fort Collins, in a way, is like there's like some gaps, but like basically it's a suburb of Denver. You could kind of say it's a suburb of Denver. It's north of Denver, and things are starting to grow so much out of Denver that eventually those two places, I think, are going to be connected one day. So,
well, I've got my favorite uncle living in Colorado Springs, and I feel like I need to go and visit a little sooner than I was planning. All right, so I'm just very curious about this, because this is something that I think about all the time. So, Calvin, what kind of story would you tell if like money was no option, budget was no option, basically there was no roof?
There was no roof. Man, I don't know. I full disclosure, I've had this question since last night, and I've been kind of stuck on it, because I have a lot of thoughts on it. Because one, I don't know about you guys, but the limitations of indie kind of helps me a lot trying to figure out how to do things. Because if it was too easy, it would be like, oh, well, I don't know. Some of the creative ways I find a way around doing things wouldn't be as, I feel like they would just be like so much easier to do, and then they wouldn't be as interesting. I don't know. But I've thought about it. I've been thinking about it. I mean, it's I don't have very many like quote unquote franchise dreams. I have a couple which are relatively obscure too. Jasmine is a huge metal fan, and like we go to a lot of concerts and stuff. And every time we go to a concert, I have like, and this would never, well, I don't know if it would never happen, but there's one being made right now. So like the likelihood that it would be available. But every time we go to a metal concert, I have this like perfect, and I know it's saying perfect is crazy, but this amazing vision of a Crow movie that's just completely different than anything that could possibly imagine. But like at the same time, right, like making something like that is a little bit of a weird idea to me too, because I've never adapted anything. Obviously, it's all been stuff out of my head. So I don't know. I have no idea, but I have very obscure franchise dreams. Very, like, I think I have a total of 3, including that Crow one.
Mm-hmm.
I have movies that come into my head, like Safe House 1618, for example, was a much bigger movie in my head than it ended up being by the time I ran around to making it. When I first had the idea, like when they kidnapped him at the beginning, I had them like hold an entire hotel hostage, and then like they were hanging out in a warehouse for 40 days. That was like the idea in my head. And then as I was listening to this, I was writing and working on stuff, and I was listening to this Film Courage video, which I don't know if you guys have seen that YouTube channel, but
oh, absolutely.
Sometimes to me, like sometimes it's really good, but sometimes to me it feels like film discourage. Like I'm going to discourage you from doing anything.
Sure.
And this one guy was like, if you're going to make an indie film, don't set it in your house, because no one cares to see what happens in your house. And that's really boring. Find a crazy place that no one's ever seen before. And I went, what if I set this whole thing in my house? And then the whole thing kind of like kicked off, and like, like it worked a lot better because I put it under that budget lens. So like the no ceiling question is such a hard question for me. And I have been thinking about it since last night. And I'm sorry that I don't have a better answer for you, but yeah.
No, that's
I
okay.
thought that was a great answer.
Yeah, that's very fair. I'm curious, Dante. Same question for you. What would you do?
Yeah, absolutely.
So, I have I have one project, but I also have a very similar answer to you, Calvin, because I love limitations. I've always worked within them, and so just to kind of bring it back to the Alpines a little bit here, when Maui first approached me with that script, there was a lot of like natural disaster elements in the script and like nature shit. I'm like, no, we can't do this. What do you mean we can't do this? I'm like, we're making a movie for $8,000, maybe a little bit more, and where are we supposed to get trees to just kind of like throw down into the middle of the road? How am I going to make this storm? And like, I don't really do things like that. And something that like growing up and making indie films, I've never bit off more than I can chew. And to kind of explain that a little bit better, if I knew I couldn't do something well and make it look like it was done for $50,000 when it was done for $50, I wouldn't do it. So I would always think about that. And like, can I make this look good? If I can't, I won't do it. And I think, Matt, that was something that you complimented a lot about the Alpines, was like some of the fight scenes and some of the shit. And you're like, oh, here it comes. And then it was good. So thank you.
You're welcome.
But yeah, like I love kind of limiting myself to things. I also like with like focal length and things, I try to like, I live within limitations. And super low budgets. Like I try to do as much for as little as possible because I think it's a little bit more fun. And I also don't have to answer to anybody. Like I don't want to deal with other people's money unless I trust them with more than my life, because I still want to be able to make my project. But all that being said, I do really want to make a like serial killer thriller drama, like more of like a detective story, kind of in the reign of Seven. A little bit different. I mean, not to follow that same mold exactly. But I really want to do it as a movie because everything is done as series now, and I love television. But I grew up wanting to make movies. Yeah, of course, I'd love a shot at making my own TV series, but I feel like it can still be done. You can still tell a great story in 2 to 2.5 hours that isn't like just bullet points of something. And I've had a pretty clear image in my head of how I would do it. And I got more excited to do it when, did either of you guys see The Little Things? Came out last year.
Yes.
The Denzel Washington one?
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah.
That movie made me want to die. It was absolute dog shit. I'm going to call that movie a steaming pile of dog shit. I was so hyped for that movie.
Yeah.
Like, oh, cool. Like, it's set in the 90s. It's got Denzel. It's got Rami Malek. And say what you will about Jared Leto, but he does still have an Oscar. I don't love his portrayal of the Joker, but he's still a good actor. He's just, we're not all making gold every chance we get.
Absolutely.
So diving into that movie, I was so hyped. And I loved the first 5 minutes. It's like, oh, this is going to be good. And then I wanted to die. By the end of it, you've got to be fucking kidding me. That was like what I was excited for during COVID. Like some of the movies that were coming out, I was like, yeah, like we got a good one. Nope. Like Denzel was great because he's Denzel, but he could not even save that atrocity. And it just made me sad. And it got me even more excited about eventually getting to make that movie. But that's something that I need a little more money for because it's pretty ambitious. But otherwise, limitations in the indie world is where I strive.
I'll join you with the underwhelming feeling left within me after seeing that particular film. But yeah, I thought a lot of the mood was so good, and yeah, I'd love to see you behind the helm, at the helm of a project kind of like that. Would be fun. Now your guys' stuff is kind of cooler, but just to even things out here, I'll pitch in what I would do. And not that I've thought about it at all, but a specifically 8-episode series, like for a Netflix or something, of a remake of The Black Hole. That has been something I've wanted to do probably since I've seen it. And that's the old Disney, The Black Hole, with Robert
You're
Forster.
really showing your age here.
Yeah, I know. That's a film that we saw back in the 70s, kids.
I watch a lot of 70s and 80s TV shows. I've just never heard of it.
Oh, you've never heard of it? Dude, well, you have certainly seen something from it at some point, because there are very popular, I don't know, but there are robots that are iconic to that particular film. And there's certain things done in that film that have just never been really done since then. And I think with today's technology and the room that you get when you do a series, the room that you have to let things breathe and things develop and happen, would be just a fun playground for The Black Hole. So yeah, kids, if you haven't seen The Black Hole, check out The Black Hole. Starring Robert Forster.
Are you doing this right now?
Yeah, I am. I hadn't heard of it either.
Now, I think I'm pretty sure it came out in 79. But
79, yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So, some of the effects, I think if you look at it in a proper perspective, you go, wow, that's pretty good for 1979. But some of it's kind of corny, doesn't really hold up. I think there's a nugget there of really interesting things with the crew. I think a modern design of some of the robots would be really cool, but not too different from what they were, because I just absolutely love what they were. In fact, I have a big giant toy here of Maximilian from The Black Hole that I absolutely loved Maximilian. Okay, well, let me get back to relevant things here. Thanks, guys. I appreciate hearing your opinions on that. So
I looked it up.
Oh yeah, and now you guys have homework. All right, Calvin. Like for me, in my age, I've made a film. I've put it out when I was younger. I wanted to do music. I made an independent album, and that I was able to perform and put out. I've had children grow up to be good people. My life, I feel like if it ended today, that would be awful, and I'm not inviting that, universe. So please don't.
Knock on some wood.
But yes, I think I could die a happy man. But for Calvin T. Shepard, what is your ultimate goal with filmmaking? And what would you have to accomplish to say, okay, I can leave this world a happy man now?
I don't know if this is necessarily fully going to be my accomplishment, but I definitely would like to be a big part of this. I believe that our art form is in a transitional period between eventually what we do with indie films is, I hope, one day going to be kind of extremely common. So much so that when you're on your road trip through the United States over the next couple months, and the way that you could stop in any city and go to an art gallery and see stuff from local artists. If you were to drive through Denver, the likelihood that you could stop and watch a movie that was made in Colorado is extremely high. Same thing when you stop in Kansas City and all the way across. I'd like to die happy, being able to see movies transition into this extremely accessible art form in the sense of like, it's so hard to be a filmmaker. Like, I mean, it's hard to be an artist in general. It's very hard to do that in any form. But like to be a filmmaker, like you have to make so many different elements work, and it is extremely expensive to the point where you have to work at a sand and gravel pit for a year in order to make something happen, or at a restaurant as a restaurant manager, or whatever it is that you have to do in order to make your film happen. It's hard. It's really difficult, and I don't see it getting any easier, but I definitely hope that it becomes, our access to cameras and our access to the technology we made is becoming more and more accessible. So I just hope, because that all it's going to take for us to do that is just continue to make films and to continue to premiere films and continue to show films and to do things like this and to do podcasts. I mean, there's not going to be a major audience for you guys, I'm sorry, that has watched my movies that are going to come in and be like, "Ooh, a podcast from Calvin T. Shepard. I'm so excited to hear that." But there's going to be, hopefully, things like this, it can only help because maybe, they haven't heard of me and they listen to this and they help watch my movie, or they haven't heard of you and they've seen my movie. So they listen to the podcast and then they become addicted. That's the only way we can help each other to that point is just continue to do what we're doing, and hopefully more people around us start doing it as well. But that's how I'd die happy, is if indie film became huge, basically replaced Hollywood. That would be really nice. But
I think that is such a fantastic answer. It warms my heart to hear a young, hungry filmmaker. You caught me off guard there with that answer, because I'm thinking I want to make, this and this and win an Oscar and have my house in Malibu. But to hear your answer was all about uplifting indie film and the industry as a whole and others. And I think that aligns so much with what our intent is with IndieEye Film Awards, is that it's these types of interviews and bonus episodes that I think are the actual helpful things, because they can hear from real people like Dante and Calvin and anybody else we've had on and are going to have on. You guys are in the trenches. You are the peers. And this is, in the modern time, I can't believe there's just not a better outlet than what we do here, where you can hear from indie filmmakers in such a raw and real way. So I hope, in just like you're saying, I hope that other entities of any sort, really, be it a magazine publication, an online, anything, film festivals, to give filmmakers this opportunity to talk and reach an audience. And yeah, there's not millions of people who are going to click onto this video or download this podcast or even come over to IndieEye and check anything out. But the more we hear voices from indie filmmakers, I think the better indie film gets. So I hope we're also assisting your dream, Calvin, of seeing that elevation. Calvin, where can people now follow or see Safe House 1618?
Safe House 1618. Well, we have an Instagram account for it. It's at Safe House 1618, which is easy. We are available for rent and all that on YouTube, Amazon Prime, Apple TV, Roku, Vudu, Google Play, Sling. I didn't even use half of these. So, yeah, and so it's out there. Just a little snippet for you. You guys have actually seen a different version of the film than that one. That I didn't have control over that one, so that's why the poster looks different. And also, my ending isn't there, so which is interesting. But yeah, so the movie is available there. If you want to also, if you're in Jersey or going to be around Jersey, the SModCastle Film Festival with your boy Kevin Smith, Silent Bob, the talkative Silent Bob, is going to be November 30th through December 4th. They haven't given us a schedule yet, so I don't know when or where. Like, I do know it's playing. It's not actually playing at this SModCastle. They had to move it to his his movie theater that he had there, which is really cool. They had a lot of submissions, is what they said. So it's gonna be an actual movie theater, and that'd be really cool. And I'd love to, talk to anybody that comes out and sees it. Hopefully, I get to meet Dante then. Dante at the Quick Stop, which is not the same Dante that isn't supposed to be there today.
Good reference.
Thank you. And then everything for me is just my name, Calvin T. Shepard Films or whatever. And find me, send me a message. We can talk. You can send me the same message you're sending Dante. If you want to send me some fuck yous, we can do that. Whatever.
And we will have links to all of these things in the description of this episode. So
thank you.
Calvin T. Shepard, a very talented indie filmmaker we've had the pleasure to speak with here. You get to hear from a man who worked his hardest to make his feature film, and you hear about struggles you go through, lessons you learn, a wonderful attitude about feedback in any capacity, a man who just wants to uplift the indie film industry and elevate those around him. I find this discussion very refreshing and very rare to hear. And what I want to know most is what's next for Calvin T. Shepard?
Since I finished Safe House 1618, I've been working on solely pretty much one project, Popular Monsters. We're hoping for a November 2023 release. We start filming in May of this year. We've been casting and doing all that stuff. We shot a concept shoot, which will, for most people, never see the light of day, but it's really helpful for us in getting things put together and trial run. But I think it's going to be really cool. I think everybody's going to like it. It's the line is a new breed of serial killer haunts the digital world through a vast knowledge of technology and social media. So Popular Monsters is my next film. So
that sounds very interesting.
I think
love that title.
Thank you. Yeah, you said that in the last podcast too, which was really nice of you.
So I'm just curious. Did you get the title from a Falling in Reverse song?
No, but I knew that question was coming because I have heard it multiple times. So the song is Popular Monster and mine's Popular Monsters, so they're not the same at all. No, I'm just kidding. They are obviously the same. And I actually quite dig that song. The thing is
that's what I'm saying. I think about that song every single time I hear the title, and then I have to put that song on.
Well, that's good. It does relate pretty thematically to what's happening within the script and what's happening within the characters. Especially with having to do with things like social media and how my serial killer operates, because when you did the last podcast, a certain film got scrutinized for saying this, but my serial killer does kind of operate like an American Psycho, in the sense of like he's obsessed with how other people see him, and in the sense of like he's obsessed on how social media sees him in particular. So so that's part of the Popular Monsters thing, but he is not the only monster, and that's all I'll say about that. So that way maybe people come and see the movie.
Oh, spoiler alert. Yeah.
I want to see it now.
Yeah, no kidding.
Dropping American Psycho at me and whatnot. And like, for listeners, I've actually had the pleasure of seeing a couple screenshots, and damn, I'm hyped. Hyped.
Nice. I'll share those with you too, Matt, and not any of you listeners.
Yes, please. Please. Yeah, I mean, this is the community I really hoped for, and to have this opportunity to speak again with you, Dante, and you, Calvin, to talk with to have indie filmmakers and directors be able to just have a conversation about real experiences in filmmaking, I think is one of those small ways we can elevate any other indie filmmakers who just are looking for something relatable. And no matter what level you are at filmmaking, we're all going through the same struggles, and the same types of creative struggles that we have are the same ones that major Hollywood directors and filmmakers have. So it's all relatable. And I really appreciate you guys for taking the time, Calvin, for talking about Safe House 1618, and giving us a little tease on what's coming next. And Dante, for joining us and giving us a little insight, a little more insight to things about the Alpines. Thank you guys so much for your time. And I hope that anybody listening to this found a little bit of motivation with this kind of insight on directors who are just trying to make things happen. So thankful that Calvin T. Shepard took time to speak with Dante and I and give this backstory about Safe House 1618. I mean, he was working in a gravel pit and still made the movie. Go follow him, Calvin T. Shepard Films on Instagram. Find a way to watch Safe House 1618. If you could make it to New Jersey, make that happen. And hopefully we'll hear from Calvin again in the future. I love being in touch with these filmmakers that participate in IndieEye and seeing their success out there on the festival circuit and just learning from their experiences. It's just so valuable to remember that we're all kind of dealing with the same struggles when trying to make these indie features, and your passion and dedication should push you forward. So go create something, and until next time, don't forget to embrace the suck.
Find more information about our guest in the description box of this episode.
If you'd like your project discussed on the podcast, go to IndieEyeFilmAwards.com and submit to our open monthly competition. Find us on Instagram and YouTube. IndieEye Film Awards.
Thanks for listening to this bonus episode of the IndieEye Film Awards podcast.